All right, I think we're ready to go. I think we're going to have a problem with a couple of the monitors, but we'll make it all work. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the St. Tammany Parish Planning Commission meeting of December the 15th. Those of you watching from home, the call-in numbers should be on the screen, and just follow the directions there. Will Secretary please call the roll?
Tom Seeger.
Here.
Kenneth Ress.
Here.
Nellen McInnes.
Here.
Bernie Willie.
Here.
Todd Richard.
Here.
Dave Dougherty.
Here.
Paul Barcelona.
Here.
Patrick Fitzmaurice.
Here.
Weldon Crawford.
Here.
Kirk Drum.
Here.
Ruff Randolph.
Here.
That's a quorum, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, public announcements. Please silence all phones and electronic devices. If you disagree with the commission on any of the cases, you have the right to appeal it to the council. Appeal cards or forms are over on my right here on the railing. Speaker cards, they're over there also. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker card and turn it in to staff, and they'll get it up here to me. Public speaking, 10 minutes each side, 5 minutes for rebuttal. And you please exit the building after your case is heard, as we may have other people that are wishing to come in. Please rise for the invocation by Commissioner Randolph and the pledge by Commissioner Richard.
Father, once again, in your holy name, we come to you to say thank you. We thank you for life. We thank you for your grace and mercy that you bestowed upon each and every one of us and our families, our homes, our communities, our businesses, Lord. We thank you for our parish government and all of our employees. Lord, we thank you for this commission. Lord, give us the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding this night to exercise wisdom that is in the best interest of our people. It's in your holy name that you also bless each and every one of us this coming holiday season, whether it's Christmas or New Year's. Provide us with safety, Lord, with also, and make sure that we have a very, very prosperous New Year. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, commissioners, in your packet there was minutes from the November 10th meeting. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to review them. If there's not any corrections, I need a motion to approve. Commissioner Randolph.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve. Commissioner Crawford.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Crawford. Any discussion? Please vote.
$11 yeas.
Okay, thank you. Public hearings, staff, we have any requests for postponement?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. First group is entering parish right-of-way, servitudes, easements, and Tammany Trace. First item is, excuse me, request to enter the parish right-of-way from Myrtle Drive for the purpose of installing parking spaces. Terabella subdivision, the debtor is Terabella Group LLC. Council district member is Honorable Marty Dean. The general location is property is located on the north side of Bootlegger Road, Highway 1085, west of Bricker Road, Covington, Ward 1, District 1 and 3. Staff?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, sir. This office is in receipt of Mr. Kelly McHugh's request on behalf of the Terabella Group to enter the parish right-of-way for the purpose of constructing parking spaces between Terabella Boulevard and Bocage Court along Myrtle Drive. The office has reviewed the request from Mr. McHugh, and we have no objection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Paul Marone on behalf of Terabella Group LLC. Several months ago, I appeared before you and amended the Terabella PUD. And one of those amendments was to provide for this parking in this area. We're requesting the right to enter the Myrtle Drive right-of-way so that we can add the additional parking for the town center portion of Terabella. And we would respectfully request your approval this evening. We are aware of the conditions set forth in the resolution and are prepared to meet each one of those. Be happy to answer any questions any of the commissioners might have.
Thank you, Mr. Morone. Anyone in the audience wish to speak either for or against? Seeing no one, I will close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Yes, I move to approve the right-of-way with the resolution set forth by the staff.
All right. Commissioner Willie.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Willie. Any further discussion? Please vote.
I'm not sure.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is request to enter the Tammany Trace for the purpose of constructing a sidewalk connection in association with Dove Park Ridge subdivision. The debtor is Dove Park Ridge LLC. Parish Council District Representative is Honorable Riker Toledano. General location, property located on the south side of Dove Park Road, west of Louisiana Highway 59, south of Interstate 12, Covington. There was a wrong ward and district advertised. It should be Ward 4, District 5. Staff?
The petitioner is requested to enter the Tammany Trace for the purpose of constructing a 6-foot concrete walkway and culvert to connect the Trace Parkway at the western edge of the Tammany Trace, about 1,084 feet south of the intersection with the Dove Park Road. The staff doesn't have any objections. We do have a couple of comments. One of our comments is the width of the cleared area should not exceed 10 feet, and the width of the pavement shall not exceed 5 feet. The applicant petitioner has agreed to that stipulation, and they have actually given us a revised request, requesting the 5 feet. However, on the drawings that they gave, it still indicates 6, so that would just be something that we would need to, to get fixed before final approval. And also we had a comment that no trees are to be cleared along the Tammany Trace, with exception of a 15-foot section of the trace needed to install the concrete and walkway culvert, and they had actually agreed to that as well. And that's it.
Okay. Mr. Shane?
Good evening. Jeff Kane with the Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I represent the developer, Dove Park Ridge LLC, and this is the access for the Dove Park Ridge subdivision, which you recommended zoning approval on, and as you may remember, had a connection to the Trace on its east end. In response to the staff comments, the developer last week resubmitted its request to conform with all staff comments. In particular, there'll be a single 5-foot wide concrete walkway that will come from the subdivision and connect or intersect to the Trace. We understand that that clearing area cannot exceed 10 feet. The area wherein we place this 5-foot walkway. We also understand that there is no more than 15 feet to be cleared from the Trace itself, just as staff has indicated. Also, the director mentioned to me before the case was called that there may need to be adjustments made as it relates to the performance obligation, the amount of the performance obligation. We have no problem with working with staff to meet whatever the typical performance obligation requirements would be for a construction of this type. So I'm confident that we can meet all staff requirements. This is obviously one of the pieces of the puzzle to make the Dove Park Ridge PUD actually look like the depictions I've been giving you for months as to what we hope to do. So we think this is one of the strengths of the subdivision in that it allows us to have a direct access to the trace, let our residents enjoy the trace, as do so many residents in our parish. With that having been said, we would appreciate your consideration of approval this evening to enter the trace, subject to all staff comments. If any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Anyone in the audience wish to speak for or against on this item? Seeing no one, I will close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Richard.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question's for staff. I have absolutely no problem with the request and your recommendations, except I'd like to understand why 5 foot instead of 6 foot.
It's actually one of the stipulations in the code that it has to be 5 feet.
Okay, so it just seemed like in this particular case, 6 foot would allow people to pass in opposite directions, but understand. Thank you.
Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by
Chairman?
Commissioner Fitzmaurice to approve. Commissioner Randolph seconds. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Ross?
just to clarify what Mr. Shane had mentioned, we miscalculated the performance obligation. So if he is to provide a engineering cost estimate, we would just add that to the record and we'd use that as the basis for the bond.
Okay. All right, that it was included in your motion? Okay, and also the second, right? Okay. Please vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if you're not going to display the vote on the screens until that's fixed, would you please announce the vote? In other words, 11-0. And if there are any nay votes, would you please name the people who cast those votes? Because there's no other way for me to record it
Okay.
until the TV is working.
All right. Revocation review, we have none. Minor subdivision review, 2020-2110-MSP, a minor subdivision of partial B3 into parcels B3A, B3B, B3C, B3D, and B3E. Owner and representative is Star Acquisitions LLC, Vincent P. Centani. Surveyor is Kelly McHugh and Associates. Parish Council District Representative, Honorable Cheryl Tanner. General location, the parcel's located on the north side of Pratt's Road, east of Louisiana Highway 59, Abita Springs, Ward 10, District 6. This was postponed from the November 10th meeting. Staff?
The applicant is requesting to create 5 parcels from parcel B3. The minor subdivision request requires public hearing due to parcel B3 was part of a minor subdivision approved in August 2018. Parcels B3B, B3C, B3D, and B3E do not have parish road frontage and are proposed to be accessed via a private road. The proposed name of the access depicted on the survey plat shall be granted approval by the Planning Commission, and also the owner is requesting a waiver to construct the 35-foot access servitude and the required drainage prior to building permit being issued instead of prior to the plat being recorded. So the request shall be subject to the above and the below comments, items number 1 to 9.
Okay. Yes, sir. You, Mr. Centani?
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Okay.
Do you have any comments?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any comments for us?
No, I'm just, again, we asked for the waiver to go ahead and construct the road, and I'll be able to, continue on selling in the lot B3A. And then, we're gonna proceed in constructing the road immediately after that.
Okay. All right, is there anyone in the audience wish to speak for or against on this item? I'll close it to the public, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner McInnes.
Yes, Mr. Centani, I'm just curious, are you going to be clearing the lots, or?
No, we're gonna do the land, I mean, the road will be done first, and then we'll clear the lots.
You're clearing the lots?
After we complete the road, after everything's approved.
Um,
We'll only clear lots as we sell the house.
But you're clearing the entire lot, or?
No, we'll start with the road, get that approved, and then we'll start to sell the lots.
But will you just clear the yard and home area, or you're clearing the entire acreage?
No, just the home area is what we've been doing. We did the 3 in the front already, we did, on that face Patch Road, and all we're doing is clearing about 100 feet, I would say, about 150 feet from the road back. So the houses sit back around 50 feet from the road, and then we're clearing an additional 100 feet beyond that to put the house. The houses are approximately 70 feet wide
Okay.
and deep. And we usually, on each one, we're trying to leave a buffer of about 10 feet on each side.
Yeah, I noticed that the area is very rural
Yes, it is.
still, and that would help it fit in a lot better.
And since we've done it, we've been able to get the other residents, Spectrum has come in there to bring in services because no one really had service out there for internet, and they're really happy about that. And the only thing we're trying to deal with is we have some people that are bringing a lot of trucks in and out, which is a beta issue, so we're working on that as well.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, you have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve.
With the waivers?
With the waivers.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any further discussion? Commissioner Rushord.
Mr. Centani, you do agree with the comments by staff and will comply with them, correct? Mr. Centani, right here.
Okay, I'm sorry?
Staff had items 1 through 9. You agree with their recommendations and agree to comply with them?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. No further discussion, please vote. Who hadn't voted?
Mr. Drum.
Crawford, okay.
11 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carried.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does that work for you, Bill?
So far, so good. Thank you.
All right, next item is 20. Okay, all right, good deal. All right, next item is 2020-2149 MSP, a minor subdivision of 4.639 acres into lots 1 and 2. Owner and representative is Theron Tillison and Edward L. Tillison. Parish Council District Representatives, Honorable Thomas J. Smith. General location, the parcel located on the south side of James Crosby Road, west of Bolden Road, Pearl River, Ward 8, District 14. Staff?
The applicant is requesting to create 2 lots from a 4.639 acres. The minor subdivision request requires a public hearing due to Lot 2 does not have public road access, is in proposed to be accessed via a 30-foot access servitude.
All right, Tillison's here. Good evening. You have anything you want to make a comment on as far as staff comments? You agree with all the staff comments and
Yes, sir.
everything?
Yes, sir, I agree with everything.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? I'll close it to the public, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I motion to approve this request. I know the area and the family really well, so I motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve, Commissioner McInnes.
Mr. Tillotson. I was just curious, I'm sorry, I'm confusing this with another project, so never mind.
All right, Commissioner Willie.
Second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Willie. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Eleven yeas, 0 nays, motion carried.
Okay. Next item is 2020-2155 MSP. A minor subdivision of parcel 4 being 82.23 acres into lots A1, A2, A3, A4, and A5. Owner and representative is Johnson Road Partnership and in Commandant. Parish Council District Representative Honorable David Fitzgerald. General location, the parcel is located on the north side of Johnson Road, east of Louisiana Highway 437, Covington, Ward 3, District 2. Staff?
The minor subdivision request requires a public hearing due to Lot A5 does not meet the minimum lot width of 300 feet required under the A1 Suburban Zoning District and requiring a waiver from the Planning Commission. The proposed name of the access depicted on the survey for a plat for Lot A1 shall be granted approval by the Planning Commission. The proposed name for the access depicted on the plat for Lot A4 also shall be granted approval by the Planning Commission. And the rear of Lot A2 does not meet the minimum width of 300 feet as required under the A1 and requires a waiver from the Planning Commission. So the request shall be subject to the above comments and also comments number 1 that, the access road names be on the map and approved.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Merle.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Members of the commission, Paul Marone on behalf of the Milling family and the Johnson Road Partnership. This 82-acre tract located along Johnson Road, we're proposing the minor subdivision pursuant to Mr. Bono's map. The configuration, particularly with regards to A2 and A5, is a little unusual, based in large part because of the gas pipeline that dissects the property in that area. We're trying to work around that pipeline and some wetlands that are on the site, which has led to the somewhat unusual configuration and is the reason that we're asking for a waiver with regards to the width on Lot A5. With regards to the waiver on A2, same issue. We have the pipeline, and so we're trying to keep all of A2 on one side of the pipeline, which means in the back it's coming to a point because of the trajectory that the pipeline takes across the property. All of the parcels are quite large, with the smallest being 5 acres, the two in the back 24 acres and 30 acres. Likewise, even A5 and A2 exceed the 5-acre minimum allowed under the A1 zoning. So we would respectfully request your approval of the minor subdivision to create these lots with the waiver on the frontage for A5 and the rear width of A2 since it comes to a point pursuant to the location of that gas pipeline. I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners might have with regards to the layout or our request this evening. Thank you.
Does anyone in the audience wish to speak either for or against on this item? I'll close it to the public, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, these lot sizes, they far exceed the A1 requirements, and I don't have a problem with this. Move for approval.
With the waivers?
With the waivers, right.
Motion by Commissioner Willie to approve with the waivers, Commissioner Seeger.
I second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Seeger. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Eleven yeas, 0 nays, motion carried.
Thank you. All right, re-subdivision review. The first item is 2020-2129-MRP, re-subdivision of lots 11 through 30 into lots 11A, 13A, 15A, 17A, 19A, 21A, 23A, 25A, 27A, and 29A, square 346B. Town of Mandeville, owner representative, and representative is SMS Holdings Company, LLC, Sean Delaney. Surveyor is John E. Bono and Associates, Parish Council District Representative, Honorable James J. Davis. General location, the property is located on the north side of Nelson Place, on the east side of Ozone Place, and on the west side of Rapitel Street, Mandeville, Ward 4, District 7. Staff?
The reason for the public hearing requirement is that the proposal involves the creation of more than 5 lots, and the request shall be subject to the comment, as per 911, the survey shall be amended to show Nelson Street instead of Nelson Place.
Okay. Sean Delaney? Good evening.
Good evening. Actually, Sean Colleen, I'm one of the other owners. We're just trying to subdivide the 20 lots into 10 and build 10 single-family homes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to speak for or against on this item? Seeing no one, I will close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a quick question for staff. Helen, on the A4 zoning, we've got a 90-foot frontage. These are substandard lots, so I guess there's an ordinance that, how does the ordinance relate to the 90-foot?
Yeah, considering that they are substandard lots of records, it's required to combine the lots together to meet a minimum of 50 feet and 5,000 square feet.
50, okay.
So in that, the A4 minimum lot size or lot width does not apply in that case.
Okay. So this does meet the minimum, okay. Mr. Delaney, just had a quick question. Did y'all look at possibly combining 3 lots instead of 2 to make larger lots?
It didn't work out just because of, it wouldn't make sense. It would only be 2 lots basically on each side.
Okay. So basically, it's a financial decision to try and
To a degree,
work
yes.
this out to the
And
best.
it also, the other houses that are leading up on that street are all 50-foot wide lots. So this would match all of the existing houses.
Do y'all have more inventory of these size lots?
We have 20 total. We've already got approval on 10 and 4 built, and these are the last 10.
Okay.
And that would be it.
This is your last batch?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much, appreciate it.
No problem.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Crawford to approve. Commissioner Seeger.
I second that motion.
Second by Commissioner Seeger. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Eleven yeas, 0 nays, motion carried.
Thank you. All right, next item is 2020-2148-MRP, re-subdivision of 11.32 acres of green space into lots 16A, 17A, and the remaining green space. Bushwood Estates, owner Secret Cove LLC, Deborah Hogan, representative Paul Marone, surveyors John Cummings and Associates, Parish Council District Representative Honorable Cheryl Tanner. General location, the property is located on the east side of Kokomo Lane, west of the Pearl River Navigation Canal, Pearl River, Louisiana, Ward 5, District 6. Staff?
The public hearing is required considering that, as stated in the restrict covenants of the approved plat, no lots shall be further re-subdivided without approval from the planning commission. Also, lot 17A does not meet the minimum lot width of 150 feet required under the A2 suburban zoning district. The width of parcel 17A shall be increased to a minimum of 150 feet or requiring a waiver of the regulation by the Planning Commission. The request shall be subject to the above and below comments. The survey should be amended to add the signature line for the chairman of the Planning Commission. And also, staff suggests to increase the width of the proposed lot 17A to meet the minimum lot width of 150 feet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone again, this time on behalf of Secret Cove LLC and Dr. and Ms. Hogan. This is within Bushwood Estates, as Ms. Lambert just noted. Historically, or originally, when this little subdivision was laid out, we had Lot 18 and 17 at the end of the cul-de-sac that you see there. Some time ago, because of the branch that drains through there into the Pearl River Navigational Canal, there was some erosion, and it really wasn't a suitable lot, a buildable lot at that point. So we converted that area to green space. The request this evening is to recapture 17A and 16A, as you see on the Cummings plat. We still have less than 25 lots in the entire subdivision. These lots exceed the minimum of the 1 acre requirement under the A2 zoning and are consistent with the other lots that are there in the development. With regards to the staff's concern about parcel 17A and the width, we do not need a waiver. We will amend the plat to comply with that requirement. I'm not quite sure why it doesn't comply with it already, to be honest with you, because we clearly have enough frontage there to do that. So that's a minor change that we can certainly make so that lot is compliant and it does not require a waiver from you. There is still more than ample green space throughout the development and no adverse impact. So we would respectfully request your approval of the creation of lots 16A and 17A pursuant to Mr. Cummings' plat, which is attached to your staff comments.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anyone in the audience wish to speak either for or against on this item? Seeing no one, we'll close it to the public, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
Paul, I have a question. So the whole 11 acres was green space as part of Bushwood Estates?
That's correct.
Okay, so if we would get left with 7.32 acres of green space, does that still meet the minimum requirement of the original Bushwood Estates?
Yes, that is still, there is still more, let me answer that in two ways. There's still more green space than is required because of the nature of the site. There is no green space required because we're under 25 lots. But I think more importantly to your question, the green space that is provided still within the development, even with the creation of these lots, is consistent with what was originally approved back in, I think that was 2003, 2004, I believe. So the overall green space after these are created is still consistent with what the original plan had.
Okay, I was just under the impression once green space is, in place, that it can't be subdivided or, even dealt with, but I guess so.
I think you're thinking of a PUD.
Maybe
And so PUDs are a little bit different animals, and there the green space is different and is preserved. This is just a straight A2 development.
Okay.
And as I said, that 7.32 acres, a portion of that had been lots previously in the original layout, that we removed those lots because they really weren't buildable because of the washout that we experienced from the branch. So we're essentially recapturing those just to the south, far enough away from the branch.
Great. I'll move for approval with the waivers.
Motion by Commissioner Willie to approve with the waivers. Now,
There's actually no more waivers.
there's not any waivers, right?
Paul agreed to.
Okay, not any waivers.
17A.
Commissioner Crawford.
A second.
Second by Commissioner Crawford. Any further discussion? Please vote.
11 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried.
Thank you. All right, preliminary subdivision review. 220-2151-PP, Lakeshore Villages, Phase 12, developer owner D.R. Horton Incorporated, Gulf Coast. Engineer developer Duplantis Design Group, PC, Parish Council District Representative, Honorable Jake Airy. General location, property located on the north of Oak Harbor Boulevard, west of Louisiana Highway 433, east of Interstate 10, Slidell, Ward 9, District 13. Staff?
Yes, sir. The preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office, and an inspection was made of the site on November 24th, 2020. Planning Commission approval shall be subject to the following items being addressed. 1, provide dimensions for the revised drainage servitude to the east of lot number 2488. 2, provide written plan approval from Oak Harbor East Utilities for this phase of Lakeshore Villages. 3, provide a water and sewer letter of capacity for this phase of Lakeshore Villages from Oak Harbor East Utilities. And there's no funded maintenance obligation required since this is a community development district owned and maintained subdivision, and no mandatory developmental fees are required at final submittal since a public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, representing D.R. Horton, Inc., Gulf Coast, as it relates to our request for preliminary subdivision in Lakeshore Villages Phase 12. If you look at the 3 comments at the top of page 2, I will provide you with responses from our engineer. As to number 1, the plat has been revised to show the dimension of the revised drainage servitude. Number 2, the plans will be submitted to Oak Harbor East Utility for review, and an approval letter will be provided to parish staff upon receipt. And number 3, the utility provider has already provided an intent to service letter. This letter will be provided to parish staff. The utility expansions required to accommodate this phase are currently under construction, and upon time of the phase's recordation, these expansions will be completed and will provide adequate capacity to service this particular Phase 12. With these responses, we would appreciate your grant of preliminary subdivision approval subject to staff report in light of the responses I've provided you. If any of you have questions, I'll be glad to address them at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Anyone in the audience wish to speak for or against on this item? Seeing no one, I'll close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Mr. Shane,
Yes, sir.
first of all, I want to commend you on the, and your team on the report. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you,
Motion
sir.
by Commissioner Randolph to approve. Commissioner Reese, excuse me.
Man, we have made some headway. I got a question for staff. Do we have a waiver in place for lot 24, 26 already? Per the comments on the restrictive covenants, I think it's question, or is it already in place?
We believe that we procured a waiver for 24, 26. Yes, sir.
Yes. Let's knock that one through, huh? Okay. The other question I have is, so I've moved to a new area, and I've shared a little bit with this with Jeff, and one of the latest things that I've run into is my concerns about sewage discharges into our waterways. And this is kind of a question for staff. I assume this has a lot of lift stations within this subdivision to get to its end treatment plant. Is that correct? Do we know that?
There's multiple lift stations. That wouldn't, a lot's a subjective term.
Right, okay, well, lift stations to move it to some point. And the reason I asked that question is, recently in the power outages that occurred with the latest storms that passed through. One of the things that I noted was I happen to live in a subdivision that has lift stations moving to a central system. Obviously, when power goes out, lift stations don't work too good. And as a result, we had raw sewage spilling out into the drainage system of the subdivision. I mean serious sewage, and ultimately going into Bayou Chinchuba, which ultimately going into Lake Pontchartrain. And as we look at these systems, and I don't know what the state requirements are, but it appears to me that we're flawed in our ability to handle, because there's no backup power systems required. It doesn't appear. Katrina was another good example of that. That was for a lot longer time period. And I don't know if it's a state requirement about the discharges or where the requirements come in, but I would see this development being extremely large, a power outage there with a number of homes in there. And if I'm not mistaken, everything has to be pumped out of this subdivision. In other words, you discharge into waterways, and then it is pumped over the levee into Lake Pontchartrain, if I'm not mistaken. So if the pumps aren't working because of power outage within the subdivision, and I don't know if that's true, to get them over the levee, basically we have raw sewage standing within the subdivision because it's within a levee. Is there anything in place to keep that from occurring?
First of all, as you know, there's a utility provider for this development. That utility provider has backup power to the plant, and then many of the facilities do have, in fact, generators as a backup.
But do the lift stations have them?
To the source of power. Yeah.
You do have backup power?
I don't know about to all, because again, it's not our system, but to answer your question. Now, I would say also, you know, this would be an observation. This is not an engineering comment. I would certainly defer to staff, but probably this area is not as vulnerable to loss of power as you might think. It's all underground. There are no trees of significance. There's really no obstructions. You don't have some of the traditional impediments that might suggest there'd be a loss of power. But I think in answer to your concerns, we believe that there is a backup source of power for the utility provider, and that many of the facilities, including the lift stations, in fact have generators as backups.
And Jeff, you just happen to be the first one up with this question in my mind. And I think it's been something that we've somewhat...
First one, middle one, and last one.
We've been overlooking the end result of sewage. And I think last week in zoning, we were talking about the homeowners were concerned about raw sewage going to the bayous, and they should be. And I don't know what the state requirements are, the parish requirements in detail, but I think it's wise that our developers start to consider and our planning staff start to consider how we manage this discharge in the end. Because in the end, it's going, we only have bayous and Lake Pontchartrain. And I don't think anybody that lives in the parish, including anybody in the audience, that would like to see our raw sewage heading that way. So I'm going to be starting to pay more attention to this particular item, and hopefully we can make something happen that makes it better for everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to confirm for Mr. Rest.
Okay,
A
Chris,
waiver
go
for
ahead.
2426 was obtained tentative as part of the approval.
Say again.
A waiver for lot 2426 for the driveway was approved at the tentative hearing.
Okay. Commissioner McInnes.
I just want someone to clarify, how many phases are in this overall Lakeshore Villages? It seems like I've been here since February, and every meeting, there's a new phase for Lakeshore Villages.
Isn't that wonderful?
Until that hurricane
If you come from
comes.
my side of the table, that's one of the best things that
until that hurricane comes, and I think this is a disaster waiting to happen of
Well, I
exceedingly
understand.
large proportion.
I'm sorry. You have expressed that sentiment before. Quite frankly, I vehemently disagree because the subdivision meets the standards promulgated by law, but I respect your opinion. To answer your question, phase 13 is the last phase.
Hallelujah. Thank you very much.
Beauty is in the eyes of.
Anything else now?
That's all, thank you.
Commissioner Crawford?
Jeff, I had a quick question for you. On this particular phase, what's the main exit or main out road leaving this group here?
Let me get the map.
Okay.
'Cause I'm not sure. So looking at the, and I assume that if you look at the vicinity map in the upper right
Yeah.
corner,
Mm-hmm.
so we assume that the primary access would be on Lakeshore Boulevard West coming out to
Okay.
Housing Beach Road.
Okay. So it looks like we'd be going down Bellwood Bay Drive or somewhere up in there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Reason for asking is lot 20, 24, 26. It's over on the benign side, if you will, I guess.
Right.
So, okay. I remember when we approved that one. Did we have a second on that approval? I'll second.
Not yet.
Thank you.
I'll second.
You'll second? Okay. Mr. Shane, I do have a comment. Now, you had the waiver on this one particular lot, but there's a number of corner lots. And this is just the preliminary phase, and I really don't want to see another request coming in for the not meeting a 60-foot standard on these corner lots like we seem to have had almost every phase that we've gone through on this thing. So I'm assuming that since there was only one lot that had to have a waiver on it, and it's already been taken care of, right?
Yes, sir.
A tentative, that's correct.
Okay. That we won't see another request for waiver on this phase.
No, sir. Preliminary, of course, is the last regulatory approval by your body, and it would be the last opportunity for us to ask for a waiver unless we were to have the matter come back on the docket. With regard to phase 12 and the next case on your agenda 13, you'll note that there are no waivers being requested tonight. Despite what some might think, my hearing is pretty good, and I make pretty good notes, and I remember some of our discussions about driveway waivers.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shane. All right, Commissioner Barcelona.
Staff, one of the comments references DOTD roadway construction. What's involved with that?
DOTD's been doing a lighting project along that corridor of I-10, and they've been putting safety rails along I-10 and making improvements also to the ramps. And so they've had construction going on since close to the beginning of this development coming in. And with the COVID and everything, it's kind of kept getting pushed back. And so they haven't completed their construction yet. I'm not actually sure when their final completion date is at this moment.
Is that something we need to check on with DOTD?
That's the purpose of this informational comment on the staff reports, is that once that construction is complete, all the required improvements for Lakeshore Villages are being implemented at this time for the full build-out. And when the DOT construction is finished, new counts will be taken and done to verify that everything meets the requirements for DOTD with the TIA that was approved.
Okay.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Crawford.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, just had a comment regarding the driveways. Restrictive covenant number 6 states, it calls out specifically the lot 2426 would be 47 feet, but it also states that if there are any other corner lots, they would be side loaded. So as you mentioned, we're expecting there to be no more requests for corner driveway issues.
All right, thank you. All right, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve. Please vote.
Mr. Drum? 11 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried.
Thank you.
Oh,
Pardon?
I'm sorry. We had 1 nay,
One nay?
Ms. McKinnis.
Okay. All right. Next item is 2020-2152-PP, Lakeshore Villages Phase 13, developer owner D.R. Horton Incorporated, Gulf Coast, engineer surveyor, the Planet Design Group PC, Parish Council District Representative, Honorable Jake Airy. General location, the property is located north of Oak Harbor Boulevard, west of Louisiana Highway 433, east of Interstate 10, Slidell, Ward 9, District 13. Staff?
Yes, sir. The preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office, and an inspection was made at the site on November 24th, 2020. Planning Commission approval shall be subject to the following items being addressed. 1, provide written plan approval from Oak Harbor East Utilities for this phase of Lakeshore Villages. 2, provide a water and sewer letter of capacity for this phase of Lakeshore Villages from Oak Harbor East Utilities. 3, add a fire hydrant along Sea Breeze Drive so the required fire hydrant spacing is met. 4, revise plans to include the required blue reflectors call out at all fire hydrant locations as shown on the water and sewer plans. No funded maintenance obligation is required since this is a community development district owned and maintained subdivision, and no mandatory developmental fees are required to final submittal since a public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shane?
Thank you, sir. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, representing D.R. Horton, Inc., Gulf Coast, as it relates to our request for preliminary subdivision approval for Phase 13 of Lakeshore Villages. In response to the 4 numbered staff comments on page 2, we respond as follows. With regard to number 1, plans will be submitted to Oak Harbor East Utility for review, and the approval letter, when obtained, will be provided to parish staff. Number 2, the utility provider has provided an intent to service letter. This letter will be provided to parish staff. The utility expansions required to accommodate this phase are currently under construction. Upon time of this phase's recordation, these expansions will be completed and will provide adequate capacity. Item 3, a fire hydrant along Sea Breeze Drive has been added in order to comply with fire hydrant spacing regulations. And number 4, plans have been revised to include the required blue reflector and accompanying call-out at all fire hydrant locations as shown on the water and sewer plans. With those responses, we respectfully request that you grant preliminary subdivision approval for Phase 13. There are no waiver requests for this phase as well, subject to staff comments, but in light of the responses I have provided to you this evening, many of which are similar to what I just gave you with regard to Phase 12. If any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Anyone in the audience wish to speak for or against on this item? Seeing no one, I will close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Motion to approve preliminary plans for Phase 13.
Motion to approve. Okay, Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Nine yeas, 1 nay, 1 abstain. McKinnis, nay, and Seeger abstained.
Okay, thank you. Final subdivision review. 2020-2122 FP, Hunters Haven, Phase 1, developer owner, Favre Investments LLC, engineers, surveyors, Kelly McHugh and Associates Incorporated, Parish Council District Representative, Honorable Michael Reno. General location, this property is located on the west side of Penns Chapel Road, south of Louisiana Highway 22, Mandeville, Ward 4, District 4. This was postponed at the November 10th meeting. Staff?
Yes, sir. Periodic inspections have been made by this office during construction, and a confirmation final inspection was made on November 24th, 2020. The inspection disclosed that all the asphalt roads are constructed, but the roadside ditches need final grading. The following uncompleted items existed at the time of the final inspection and will be completed before the plats are signed. 1, provide a recreation amenity plan for the park area, including a schedule on when the amenities will be installed. 2, the roadside ditch front slopes need to be reworked to provide the required side slope. 3, the roadway cross culvert near lots number 15 and 16 needs to have erosion control measures installed on the upstream and downstream sides of the culvert. 4, the developer will need to contact the 911 addressing office to have road names and addresses verified and approved for this development. 5, revise restrictive covenant number 14 to state that the homeowners association will be responsible to maintain the green space area, the park area, and all associated amenities within this phase of Hunter's Haven. 6, provide a letter of acceptance and responsibility for the perpetual maintenance and operation of the water and sewer systems from Tammany Utilities. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of 2,000 linear feet at $22 per linear foot for a total of $44,000 for a period of 2 years. Mandatory developmental fees are required as follows: a road impact fee at $1,077 per lot for 32 lots for a total of $34,464. Drainage impact fee at $1,114 per lot for 32 lots for a total of $35,648. The fees are due before subdivision plats can be signed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Broom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Paul Marone on behalf of Fabry Investments LLC. I'm pleased to report that all items on the list have been completed as of this afternoon. All of the roadside ditches have been reworked to final grade. The roadside cross culverts near lots 15 and 16 have been dressed with erosion control measures. We have amended the final plat in accordance with items 4 and 5, as well as have put the amenity plan for the recreation area on the plat. And we have received the letter of acceptance and responsibility from Tammany Utilities. So there is nothing further that's outstanding, other than the opportunity for your staff, if approved this evening, to come out and make their final inspection. We'd respectfully request your approval of final subdivision for Phase 1 of Hunter's Haven.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anyone in the audience wish to speak for or against on this item? Yes, ma'am. Or yes, sir, whichever. Okay. Yes, ma'am. You speaking for or against?
Against.
Against, okay.
My name is Jason McGee. I live at 317 Shadow Lane, which is right behind the development, closer to the lake. There's a few things I want to discuss. Number one, this subdivision does not conform to the surrounding area or neighborhoods. All of us live on 1 acre lots. A PUD should not have been approved to allow 1 acre lots because they do not match the surrounding neighborhoods. Also, the land itself is swamp, wetlands. When I bought my house 6 years ago, I was told by everyone in the neighborhood, those are floodplains, because they knew they were inundated with water at every rain. Apparently, an outdated Corps of Engineers survey was used that does not reflect the current situation. Everybody knows that wetlands has lots of palm fronds. That entire area is filled with palm fronds. We call it Walden Pond because there's a nice, beautiful little pond out there surrounded by trees and cypress knees. That is all going to be destroyed if this is allowed to continue. We have already seen major inundation of water since this broke ground 2 years ago. I would like to remind everyone that at the December 2017 meeting, Mr. Marone said that there was not 1 teaspoon of wetlands in this development. However, now if you look at the advertising for the lots that they plan to sell, the green space that this council required them to designate is literally marked as wetlands. I would like to know how this green space is going to be utilized as a recreation/park area when it is a wetland. I would also like to know how the designated recreational area is ever going to be used, considering it's underwater most of the time. I would also like to bring it to the council's attention that we were not given proper notice of this meeting tonight. There was a sign posted that this meeting was going to take place on November 10th, 2020. Of course, that was postponed. However, no signage was put up in our neighborhood to alert us to tonight. I would have brought evidentiary material of the following. This council indicated that there was no fill to be allowed in this new development. Lots of fill has been brought in, truckloads of fill. Mr. Marone indicated that they could not put a separate entrance on Highway 22 so that our very narrow road with school buses already not able to pass by one vehicle would not be inundated with more traffic. However, this developer is actually using an entrance from Highway 22 to bring in truckloads of dirt. I have photos. They have put so much fill that the fire hydrant they installed was halfway covered by dirt. They have brought in so much fill that even a regular rain has caused water to come all the way up to the roadways when this was not normal. We have video evidence of a truck coming in to bring dirt, who knows what, at 11 o'clock at night. One of my neighbors, whose house is directly across from the development, videoed it, 11 o'clock at night. I sent it to my councilman, he is aware. Mr. Marone also said at the December 2017 meeting that there was nothing exceptional about this property. Not at all. He likened it to the preserve, that everyone was worried about building on that area, but it turned out just fine. What I would like the council to know is that this is an exceptional area because our neighborhood is literally in the corner of Lake Pontchartrain and the Tchefuncte River. So when there's water coming in from a flood, from a storm, all that water comes in from the lake. It used to be able to go into this area that they're now developing. No longer. I have photo evidence of the people who live in the back of our neighborhood. They no longer have a yard. They no longer have a yard. There is nowhere for the water to go. If any of you actually lived in our neighborhood, you would be 100% opposed to this development. And what's even scarier is there's a phase 2 and a phase 3 coming along. So you have 32 lots that are going to be put in place where there should be about maybe 9 houses tops. This water inundation has already occurred and there's not even slabs put down, driveways. All the trees we're taking out, they can't suck up any more water. Now you just have big old piles of dirt. What's going to happen when they start putting these houses? And yes, they all have to be raised. They have to be significantly raised. It's actually going to look like a bunch of hunting or fishing camps right smack dab in the middle of our beautiful neighborhood with large houses and 1-acre lots. Now we're going to have houses that are raised 9 to 12 feet off the ground because this area does flood. And then they're going to have slabs put underneath. Where is the water going to go? We're already seeing significant water inundation in the neighboring houses. It's only going to get worse. This has to be stopped. I would request that this approval be denied. I would also request if anyone on this council is prepared to approve this, that I would ask for a continuance so that I can put together an evidentiary packet of everything I'm saying. I'm not aware of how I can submit video evidence, but I can certainly print out photos. I can get affidavits from the neighbors. As I said, we were not given sufficient notice of this meeting, or a lot more of us would have been here. Unfortunately, some of us are quarantined for COVID and wanted to be here tonight but couldn't. We can certainly put together a packet that will back up everything I am saying today with evidentiary records. So at the very least, I would request that the final subdivision review be postponed until the people who actually live there and are being impacted can provide you with the photo evidence of the fill. Darkness, under darkness of night, they're bringing in the fill. The water inundation in our properties. I stood up here in December 2017 and I said, actually, our area is exceptional. We have beautiful wildlife. We have owls, we have deer. I don't hear the owls anymore. I don't see the deer anymore. We're gonna end up looking like Metairie if we're not careful. And I know nobody here wants that. So I would respectfully request that everyone take a good hard look at the advertising for the lots that's literally putting wetlands as their designated green space. And ask yourselves why the developer and Mr. Marone sat here in December 2017 and said there was not 1 teaspoon of wetlands. You can go back and you can watch the video, and that's exactly what he said. I warned y'all back then that it already flooded a lot in our neighborhood. It has increased by tenfold. As I said, a lot of people have lost their yards. They look like they're living in a houseboat back there. That big rain we had September 22nd, they couldn't even get out of their houses. They couldn't even get out of their houses. The lake and the river back up into our neighborhood. And now there is nowhere else for this water to go, and it will only get worse. That's all I have.
Okay. I don't think I asked you to state your name and address.
I did. Jason McGee, 317 Shadow Lane, Mandeville,
Okay.
Louisiana, 70471.
Do you have a speaker card on her?
Yes.
Okay. Please complete the speaker card.
I did.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for
Okay.
me?
All right. Not right now.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak against? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address. And if
Good
you haven't
evening.
filled out a speaker card, please do so.
I did, thank you.
Okay.
My name is Shirley Ulmer. I live at 312 Shadow Lane. Ever since the development of the infrastructure of this new subdivision, we've been inundated with water that we never had before. We have lived back there for 28 years, and everything that Ms. McGee stated is true. And all you have to do is look at the pictures, look at the proof, just give us a chance to show y'all what's going on back there, because everything she said is true. We do have neighbors that their children can't even play in their yard because it is so wet. It's really a shame what's happening back there, and I just hope that you will gravely consider what's going on. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak against? Anyone else wish to speak for? All right, let's go to rebuttal. Mr. Roan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. First, why are we here tonight? We're not here tonight to retry whether or not this case is approved. This case has been approved. These lots have been approved. We have the authority from this commission, this council, and this parish to build this development. The idea that some might not like the density or the lot sizes, that issue is passed. We're not here to discuss that tonight. We have an approved set of plans. The question is, have we built this development in accordance with those plans? There were 5 outstanding items. We have complied with all 5 of those items. There is absolutely no basis to delay or deny final subdivision approval for Phase 1 of Hunter's Haven. Let me address a couple of the comments. It is absolutely incorrect, patently wrong, to suggest that I ever stood up here since 2004, when this project started, and ever said there were no wetlands on this property. That is absolutely incorrect. What I have said repeatedly is that the areas that we are developing, where these lots are located, are not within any of the jurisdictional wetlands. And that is absolutely accurate as I stand here today. We have always maintained that there were wetlands on this site. We provided the wetlands delineation in 2004 and updated to today. And we have always maintained that we have used that wetland line to delineate from the areas where we were allowing development and the areas that we were preserving. That is what I have said, and I have said it consistently. When I said there is nothing remarkable about this property, If you look at that tape, what you will hear, as I said, there is nothing different from this site from right across the property line. There is nothing different from where we are developing from the other developed areas, whether it be Shadow Lane or any of the developments that are around us. The elevations are consistent, the ground is consistent, except that we are avoiding all of the wetlands on our site. We are only developing the non-wet portions of the ground. So yes, if you look at your map, you'll see a large swath of green all around these lots. That is passive green space. That has always been the case. It is passive and it is preserved because it is wetlands. That is not something that our neighbors have done. We are the only ones in the area to set aside all of this green space and to preserve this green space. With regards to the use of fill, I will simply tell you that it is my belief that we have followed each and every guideline of St. Tammany Parish. Your staff has been out there and has inspected this site on numerous occasions. They will be out there again to inspect this site before any plats could ever be recorded. I will submit to you that it is my belief, knowing Mr. Favre, knowing our engineer, Mr. McHugh, that all of the requirements of St. Tammany Parish with regards to the use of fill have been complied with. When I look at the staff comments from Mr. Tissue and Mr. Reynolds, I do not see anything that suggests that we have brought fill in or used fill in a manner that is otherwise appropriate for this site. So now, from 2004, here we are in 2020, and I'm dealing with the same arguments then, which is fine. But these arguments, by and large, were arguments for zoning with regards to lot size and with regards to green space. Those are zoning issues. This is not even tentative. This is not preliminary. What we are talking about tonight is the plans that were approved by St. Tammany Parish for the construction of the infrastructure on this site. Have we done it in accordance with those plans? And I simply point you to your staff comments. 5 items, all of which we have complied with. So I respectfully ask that given what is before you tonight, that you grant final approval, because we have built this project in accordance with the approvals that have been granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, the 2 folks that spoke against, you were in rebuttal phase. If you have any comments in rebuttal to what Mr. Morone said, please come forward and state it.
Jason McGee, 317 Shadow Lane, Mandeville, Louisiana, 70471. In rebuttal, I would state that they have not abided by what this council required. One of those things was 25 feet of green space between the houses that were behind the property. They were supposed to leave 25 feet of tree line. That's been ripped out, maybe not by the developer, but by the utilities. When they wanted to run utilities there, they just came out and ripped it all out. I have photo evidence of that as well. I believe this council should receive the evidence. I don't know if any of you have personally driven through there. I don't know if any of you have witnessed the trucks coming at 11 p.m. at night. Why are they coming at 11 o'clock at night if everything is above board? Why is that happening? Why are they coming through 22 when they said, oh no, we can't put a road through 22, yet they're coming through 22 to bring the truckloads of dirt? All the trees have been ripped up. There's already significant water inundation. I would urge you, before approving this, to go back and watch the meeting from December 2017, listen to what Mr. Morone said, and listen to what the council members said about their concerns. Those concerns have come to fruition. There is significant water inundation. And let's not forget there's a phase 2 and a phase 3 coming after this. This council specifically noted that they were concerned with water inundation. I am here 3 years later to tell you that since they broke ground, since they brought in fill, and since they have ripped up all the trees, there is significant water inundation. I have photo evidence to prove it. I can obtain all the evidence you need to let you know that the concerns that this council had 3 years ago have come to fruition. Thank you.
Okay, does the other lady wish to speak? Okay, all right. All right, no one else wishes to speak in rebuttal. I'm gonna close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Paul. I know this project has a history of coming before this committee, and this is the final subdivision approval with these outlined items. One question concerning Ms. McGee's suggestion concerning the inundation of water at this phase, which we do have 2 other phases. How can you address that?
Well, first I would point out is there is only one other phase that is proposed, Phase 2. But with regards to water inundation, I would disagree that there is any water inundation that is caused by this development. And the reason I say that is because if you look at where we have developed the non-wet and the high ground. We have not encroached into the wetlands in any way. We have not impeded the drainage of those wetlands in any way. So to suggest that somehow by putting in roads and roadside ditches that we have caused inundation in backyards on Shadow Lane or somewhere else, I simply disagree with that. I do not believe that the cause, if in fact there is water there, and if they say there is, I believe them, but I do not believe that is in any way caused by what is being done on this development.
Thank you. I'm going to allow some of the other commissioners to speak, but I'd like to go ahead on and accept this, this case, to approve this case.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve. Commissioner McInnes.
I didn't realize I was next. Give me a second. Mr. Morone, please. Are these houses going to be elevated? Just curious. I know.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
They're on piers?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, how high?
To the base, whatever the base flood elevation. And I believe, can't read my plat, but I believe it was 12 was the base flood. I could be mistaken about that, but whatever the base flood is, obviously we'll have to be above the base flood. So, the intent is that they are going to be built
Yeah.
on piers, yes.
I'm just
Has
curious.
always been the intent.
Okay. I'm just curious, if it was built on non-wetlands and the homes are elevated 12 feet, why so much fill? I mean, it sounds like there's quite a bit.
I am not aware of any fill having been brought in that would not have otherwise been a replacement of something that was brought out. Now, I'll look to Mr. Tissue and Mr. Reynolds to correct me if I am wrong, and my engineer is not here tonight, but I am not aware of any fill that was brought in other than would have been structural to replace something that had been removed.
And I guess that's all I have for you. I have a couple of things for staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the policy when, and I'm not sure, Helen's gone, when a project is postponed about posting new signage for the new meeting? That's a bit of a concern if people aren't made aware of a new date for a public hearing.
My understanding is that, and legal can correct me if I'm wrong on this, for the advertising requirements, but you are obligated to advertise for the initial meeting. And if it's postponed to that meeting, it's understood that whoever was looking for that would have seen that and followed the postponement. There is no requirement for us to go out and re-advertise something that was postponed. So the advertisement would still be up from the previous meeting where it was postponed. But I'm going to defer to legal.
Emily?
The notice requirements are in section 125-96D of the code, and you would be required to republish the notice 2 times before the next meeting. But as far as posting the property, it's been interpreted in the past, this section of the code has been interpreted that once it's been posted for the initial meeting, that it's not required to repost, but it would be required to republish in the official journal and on the website and at council chambers.
Okay.
And regarding Phase 2, will we have to go through a review process, like preliminary and final?
Yes, ma'am.
Again?
At this time, we have received no documentation for Phase 2 other than what's shown on the PUD.
So Phase 2 will have to come here.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I have at this point.
Okay, Commissioner Willie?
Yeah, Phase 1 has met all the requirements for final subdivision approval. I'll second the motion, Mr. Randolph's motion.
Okay, Commissioner Crawford?
Just a couple of quick questions to staff. Well, first to Emily, when you say posting, is that the yellow sign you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, good, that was my question. So the initial yellow sign, and if it gets postponed or something, there's no requirement to make sure it's there for the second meeting, to make sure it stays.
Right, that's how this provision of the code has been interpreted, that it does not require reposting once the initial public hearing is heard.
So it may be there, it may not be there.
And I think that they were saying it was there, but it reflected the earlier November date.
Okay. And then Chris, real quick, just from the fill standpoint, y'all have made visits out there. Any comments on fill? Have you seen fill? Anything inappropriate? Does it seem to be appropriate?
At the time of our site visits and our confirmation inspection, none of the lots had been cleared. All the lots were still wooded. Only the roadway area and the ditches had been cleared. And there may have been some structural fill brought in to make sure the road's at the minimum required elevation of 6 feet. And other than that, there was no signs of significant fill on site that we could see.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I had.
Commissioner Drum?
Oh, I'm up. Oh, thanks. Staff, please. So do you know the last specific date you went out there to look at this area?
Mm-hmm.
It's the one listed on the staff report. It would be the
24th of November, it looks like.
Yes, sir, November 24th.
Okay, do you folks happen to visit after a heavy rain?
Depends on when the rain occurs. We made some inspections in the previous month following Zeta, and before the developer had times to go out there and clean up. But we schedule them, and when they're scheduled, we go out and do them.
Okay, so you saw it before it was cleared to be able to build the houses, correct?
My understanding is it has not been cleared at this time, that all the lots are still wooded.
Okay, Mr. Marone, they are cleared now?
No, the condition is still the same as Mr. Tissue mentioned. The lots themselves have not been cleared.
Okay, and Mrs. McGee, is that her name? Said that the 25-foot buffer zone is denuded of all vegetation. Is that true?
Not to my knowledge. It's possible that if there were water lines that were laid, but that would have been, I believe, within the street right-of-way and not within the buffer zone.
Well, thank you, everybody. It seems that the people in that area are caught off guard because of the last rain or the rains that have occurred, and we're all doing everything verbal, and I'm the type of individual that likes to see if I have pictures showing that what they're saying is the truth. I'd rather have that. So I would like to postpone for 30 days until they can come back and show me what they have.
I would urge the commission not to do that. There is no legitimate basis whatsoever to postpone this case. There just is not. On November 24th, your staff was out there. Your staff has generated a report based on that. The only work that has taken place on that site since that inspection was to correct the items they talked about. Riprap was put in one place for erosion control, and the slopes of the roadside ditches were corrected and brought to a final grade. That's all we've done on that site. We have not cleared the lots. We have not done anything out there other than what was approved by these plans. There is no you will not find a cleaner final staff report than you have before you this evening. I respectfully suggest to you, there is no reason to delay approval of this project.
Are any of the houses in that area, other than where you're going to build, on
Yes.
raised up? They all are?
Not all of them. As you move further to the south, the ones along the back street are all raised. And then as you move further north, it becomes a little bit of a mix dependent on when they were built. Some are on piers, some may have fill, just depending on the time frame in which they were constructed.
Okay. Well, Mrs. McGee, is your house up on pilings or stilts, or you on the ground?
We're on the ground, and all of the houses around there are on the ground. The only houses that are raised are the one all the way at the back, closest to the lake. Those are the only ones that are raised. All the ones surrounding this neighborhood, this development, are completely on the ground. So as I said, it's going to look like a fishing camp when you're passing, going through. And I would also like to say I have photo evidence of that development completely underwater, where they're going to be putting some of the houses on the right-hand side. September 22nd or 21st, I believe, was the date. And that was, a lot of us went through there to see what it looked like because it was a heavy rain.
Okay, and you said that you have photographs
I
of
do.
the uncleared lots,
It's
is
all
that correct?
uncleared.
Okay.
And that's the scary part.
And there are wetland plants within that area, right?
Definitely, there's wetland plants all along. I've taken pictures of everything. I just didn't have enough time to prepare an evidentiary packet in order to submit it to you all.
I still stand by my proposal.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
He made a motion, yes.
Shirley Elmer, 312 Shadow Lane. If you go to the website of Hunter's Haven, and you look
We've
at-
already finished rebuttal
Yes,
and
ma'am.
everything, and he was
So,
responding
we need to,
asking a question to
I was
the
just
other
talking
lady.
about the houses that are raised.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
thank you.
They're not raised on the website.
All right. You have a motion by Commissioner Drum to postpone. Do I have a second?
I will second that. I had resubmitted a chance to speak. Mr. Drum had answered or asked some of the same questions I was gonna ask as a follow-up, but, when you say there's no reason to delay, I would turn that around and say there's no reason to hurry, because this is an extremely low area and we're getting higher and higher storm surges. I will say, because of the location of this site, I do not see how it could cause flooding on the lane where Ms. McGee lives, on Shadow Lane, because it's further north than Shadow Lane. I think it's just, we have higher lake levels now. Any little wind from the southeast pushes water up into these areas. So I just think it would behoove us to get all the information that we need to make sure this is the right decision, that maybe it just may need slight tweaking. I know we're right there at final, and we almost never postpone final. but it seems like this one is a case where it might deserve just one final look. So I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to postpone. Now, Paul, you're in the queue here. Does your comment have to do with the motion to postpone?
No, I have a question for staff.
I think we need to go ahead and take a vote on the motion to postpone.
Okay.
All right. Please vote on the motion to postpone.
Russ?
Somebody's not voted yet?
We have 3 yeas, 8 nays.
Okay, so the motion fails to postpone. All right. Can you clear the vote? And Commissioner Barcelona.
A question for staff. As a result of your inspection, does the construction that's been completed so far, does that conform to the approved drainage study?
Yes, sir. At this time, there's just a loop road in with ditches on either side.
Okay.
And the only real comment we have is that some of the ditches need to have their front slopes graded out, so they're more close to a 3-to-1 and a little more stable until vegetation takes.
So based on your inspection, you haven't seen anything that goes against the drainage study that was submitted by the developer and approved by the parish?
No, sir. We would have had those comments to the staff report to be addressed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, now we're back to the motion. Did we have a motion and a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve 2020-2122-FP. Any further discussion? McGinnis.
One more question for staff. I'm a bit surprised that a project can get approved without the final clearing of the lots. Could you just speak on that? It seemed like that would have potential for issues to come up, a lot of tree clearing.
There's no requirement for them to clear the lots prior, when they come through for the subdivision process. This will be done on a permit-by-permit basis. When they apply for a residential building permit, they'll have to provide a plot plan showing where the house is going to be and what the grading is going to be, and to show it conforms to.
So it's not a PUD? It is a PUD?
This is a PUD, yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Paul,
We have no requirement.
do they plan to clear the lots, or is it just the individual homeowner's decision?
I believe the individual homeowners will have the decision on what to clear from the lot and what not to, and that'll be handled through the building permit phase.
Okay, okay. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, we've got a motion and a second on the floor to approve this item. Please vote.
We have 8 yeas, 3 nays.
Okay. Ms. McGee, so that you know, there are appeal cards over here. Pardon? Just what?
You cannot appeal a final subdivision approval if you want to appeal a final subdivision denial.
She can't appeal it to the council? Call your councilman, Michael Reno. Okay?
I just want to note that at the December 2017 meeting, nobody was kind enough to say what you just said and let us know about the appeal process, or we would have done that. So I appreciate you letting me know about that today, and I will be in touch with Mike.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item is 2020-2150-FP, Lakeshore Villages Phase 7, developer owners D.R. Horton Incorporated, Gulf Coast, engineer surveyors, the Planis Group, PC, Parish Council District Representative, Honorable Jake Airy, General location and property is located on north of Oak Harbor Boulevard, west of Louisiana Highway 433, east of I-10, Slot L, Ward 9, District 13. Staff?
Yes, sir. Periodic inspections have been made by this office during construction, and the final inspection was made on November 24th, 2020. The inspection disclosed that all the asphalt roads are constructed and the subsurface drainage is functioning. The following uncompleted items existed at the time of the final inspection and will be completed before the plats are signed. 1, silt fencing needs to be installed between the pond bank and the rear of the lots in accordance with the erosion control plan until a mature stand of vegetation is established along all pond banks. 2, blue reflectors need to be installed in the vicinity of all fire hydrants. 3, pond bank erosion and pond siltation is occurring at the subsurface pipe located between lot 1582 and 1583. The erosion issues need to be corrected and the siltation removed. 4, erosion is occurring at the subsurface outfall pipe located within the green space area between lot 1608 and lot 1609. The erosion issues need to be corrected and erosion control measures installed. 5, remove all references to preliminary plans from the plan set. 6, the dedication statement on page 1 and page 2 on the final plats defer. Revise the statements to be consistent and include verbiage regarding the CDD owning and maintaining auxiliary structures, drainage servitudes, green spaces, signage, etc. 7, the as-bills provided show a section of the pond goes outside of the drainage servitude on lots 1604 through 1607. Revise the pond bank or drainage servitude accordingly to correct this conflict. 8, provide a water and sewer letter of capacity for this development from Oak Harbor East Utilities. 9, provide a letter of acceptance and responsibility for the perpetual maintenance and operation of the water and sewer systems from Oak Harbor East Utilities. 10, remove the fire hydrant call-out from the intersection of Lakeshore Village South and Lakeshore Village East. Nope. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of 3,360 linear feet at $22 per linear foot for a total of $73,920 for a period of 2 years. No mandatory developmental fees are required since a public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, representing D.R. Horton, Inc., Gulf Coast, the owner and developer of Lakeshore Villages Phase 7, seeking final subdivision approval this evening. In response to the 10 numbered comments on page 2 of your staff report, please consider the following. Number 1, this item has been noted and is being coordinated currently with the contractor to implement. Number 2, this item has likewise been noted and is being coordinated with the contractor to implement at this time. Number 3, this item likewise has been noted and is being coordinated with the contractor to implement at this time. Number 4, this item has been noted and is being coordinated with the contractor to implement. Number 5, the references to preliminary plans will be revised so that comment will in fact be adhered to. Item 6, this comment is noted and will be revised accordingly. Number 7, the same response, meaning that the comment is noted and the revision will be made. With regard to item 8, a letter of capacity has been received and has been tendered for staff review. Item 9, a letter has been requested, and upon receipt, it will be provided to staff as requested. And item 10, that comment is noted and has been addressed. So we believe that all of the staff comments have either in fact been addressed or in the process of being addressed. So we respectfully request that you grant final subdivision approval, subject to staff comments, understanding that staff will evaluate the documentation that support the responses I've given you this evening. If any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to respond at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Anyone in the audience wish to speak for or against on this item? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve. Commissioner Barcelona. Second by Commissioner Barcelona. Commissioner Crawford.
Just a couple of comments. or questions. First question for the staff. Mr. Shane said in item number 8 that the water and sewer, a letter of capacity has been submitted. You receive that? You acknowledge receipt of that?
I'm not sure at this time. That's something we'd have to confirm.
Okay. Jeff?
It has likely been submitted since the staff comments came out, and we understand that staff may not have reviewed or had an opportunity to review that.
But it's in their office?
I believe it to be.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, another question. The usual, on restrictive covenant number 6 for the subdivision, it talks about the driveways on corner lots, and it states that in this phase, these driveways, as a blanket statement, will not be any closer than 47 feet. Do we have waivers in place for any of these?
Yes, sir.
Waivers have already been granted?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're not making a blanket approval here. Okay. That was all I had.
Okay, I see no one else in the queue to speak. So we'll go to vote.
Ten yeas, one nay.
Okay.
McGinnis.
Thank you. All right, old business. Get all my paperwork caught up here. Yes, sir.
David, just can I have a moment of comment here?
Go ahead.
One of the things that's become pretty consistent for us is we've moved into a lot of the southern parts of the parish, and we've moved anywhere along any of the main waterways or watersheds. We're continuing to hear problems from the constituents that live in the area already. It's been nonstop in the year I've been here. I'm sure for some of you, you've been hearing it longer than that. My challenge to staff is, I know we're redoing a lot of things at this point, and maybe the ordinances that apply to some parts of the parish need to be stricter in other parts of the parish. And as we get closer to these areas where we got problems, a blanket ordinance to cover the whole parish may not make sense, but a more detailed look at some of these areas that people are having trouble and continually come to us with looking for help, that their homes and their properties are flooding now that didn't used to flood. And the developers are meeting the requirements. It's not their doing. They're meeting the requirements. But it doesn't seem like we're doing what we need to do for the people of the parish. We just don't seem to be getting there. I feel like every meeting we walk out, people walk out disappointed and that their properties are flooding. They have issues with traffic. We're still seeing the same problems. And until something changes that requires change, the developers are doing their part. But if we don't change some of the rules even further, and I know there's efforts afoot, but it almost feels like it needs to be faster. It's been a year that I've been feeling the pain of the people coming in here, and I feel like we've got to do something to help the people without adversely or keeping people from developing property. That's not the goal. But the goal is there's got to be a better way to do what we're doing here still. We're just not getting there yet. And I urge you to be more strict in what you're looking at. And I know you have turned up the heat on a lot of things. The other thing I keep hearing is almost every write-up, near final or in preliminary, there's problems with the ditches not being properly graded. They're not grassed in. The ditches are siltating up. We have retention ponds that are supposed to be in place, but they're silting up prior to, and I don't know if the requirements for maintaining those are strong enough so that early on, when the property's already being cleared, that there should be some more effort to make those systems completely functional early on versus and I understand the developers' problems because their builders are gonna come in and tear it up and make a mess of it, but in the end, if those systems aren't working, we're already clearing property, we're causing problems downstream. And I just urge you to continue to be aggressive on those things and that continue to look for ways to make that better for these people, because we're just not getting there yet. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Seeger.
I have to apologize, and I need to change my vote to an abstain on that last vote.
Okay.
I have a family member that works, that's a sub out there. I need to officially change my vote on that to an abstention.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Oh, good, it's already on. I just want to make a comment to Commissioner Ress and all the other commissioners that really the one body that can legislate the change is the council, period. That's it. It's not the staff's job, that's the executive branch, right? So that's where we need to look, and maybe we can meet with them to help guide them in some of the things that we see. Now, granted, they hear these after we hear them, we just make a recommendation. But that's the body that has to make the change. And we can only apply the ordinance. That's our simple task, to make sure that the ordinance are being complied with. I agree with you. I think the times have come that things have to change. We need to take a harder look globally, not just at the one development, not the one just down that stream, but 10 streams down and Lake Pontchartrain, those places. But we need to press, I know the council can see this, for them to make a concerted effort to do something and change the ordinances if we need to. After it's been studied, if there's a change that needs to occur, we need to do that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Crawford.
Just a comment. It seems to be comment time, so make another
We
comment.
got one more item to take
I
care
know,
of.
I know.
Old
I
business,
just
so.
I feel compelled to get this in. Along the lines of Commissioner Ress and also what Mr. Fitzmaurice just said, Nell earlier spoke and said that some of the flooding and things that we see may be not due to building, but lake rise and so on and so forth. I just wanted to comment, I've got a house on a small tributary bayou, and 25 years ago, we got no water there ever at all. And now we get water routinely, and there's no building, there's nothing that's changed in the area basically for 25 years. So my point is, from my standpoint, my personal standpoint, I know we have an environmental change. We have levels in the lake that come up probably because of barrier islands eroding and the water comes in a lot quicker. But there are issues that aren't just germane to these building things that we look at. Not that it's necessarily our job, like Mr. Fitzmaurice said. Our job is to apply the ordinances. But from an engineering standpoint, it's not always easy to see if the problem lies in these events that the 100-year storm is now maybe a 5-year storm or something like that, but the regulations haven't changed. So I just wanted to make that comment. We keep all this in our mind, we look at these things, and we try to decipher what's going on here for the best of the constituents that we can.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McInnes.
Yes, and I just want to follow up, and I just so much appreciate what the dialogue that Commissioner Ress has started. We do have a large parish and ordinances that are designed for the whole parish, when what might be suitable up in the hills of Folsom is not suitable down on Penns Chapel Road or in other floodplain zones. And I think that we're all starting to realize that. But I would urge, as we move forward in looking at how we can improve things in this parish, is to look at more at the landscape level and make our ordinances appropriate to those landscape levels.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to follow up on that, and then we're going to go on to this old business item. There's been a lot of changes in the ordinances since I've been on the commission. There will continue to be changes in the ordinances that we see. We hear our the people that live in this parish, and we're trying to take action where we can. And I know that we have to go through the council, and my feeling with the council is that they're willing to work with us on making changes. And we're moving towards that day by day. It's not something that, you know, we're gonna have a meeting next month and then it's back in place in 2 months. It's not gonna happen that quick. But what staff is seeing, what Ross and Helen are seeing, you know, we're gonna take the feedback and we will certainly get with the council and suggest to them that, you know, some changes need to be made. And they're willing to listen to us because we see and hear all this on a case-by-case basis. I agree with Nell. What may be appropriate in the Folsom area is not appropriate in the southern part of the parish. So, all that said, let's get on with business so we can get these folks out of here. Old business. 2020-2049-MSP, a minor subdivision of 1.872 acres and 3.818 acres into parcels A, B, C, and D. Owner representative is Delmont O. and Joan M. Dappermont Jr., surveyor J.V. Berkson Associates Incorporated, Parish Council District Representatives Honorable Steve Stefancic. General location, parcels located on the east side of Horace Page Road and Bayou Oak Road, future, Slidell, Ward 9, District 11. Staff?
You may recall that a few months ago, the owner made a request to subdivide the property into 4 lots, and it's now coming back in front of you. The Planning Commission is amending the request to create 2 lots, 1.872 acres and 3.818 acres. The minor subdivision request requires a public hearing due to parcel B is proposed to be accessed via a 35-foot access servitude, and the proposed name of the road has to be approved by the Planning Commission. So the request is subject to the above requirements and also the comments 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, thank you. Are the Dappermonts here? Yes, sir. Good evening. Please state your name and address.
Delmont Dappermont, 58058 Horace Page Road, Slidell.
Okay.
I was here a couple of months ago, and my wife and I were trying to do is to break this up into 4 pieces to bring the 3 sons back from Alabama, if you recall. And you approved that. And when we went back and started getting the cost of what it would actually cost to meet all the requirements, it was just not feasible financially. So we decided, break it into half, less requirement, bring 1 son in at a time. That's where we are.
Okay. All right. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of this?
I'm in favor.
Yes, sir. I saw somebody behind you there raise their hand too.
Oh, my wife.
You think she's in favor?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Anyone in the audience against? Seeing no one, I will bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve with, subject to staff's comments.
Would this be with waivers?
With the waivers, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Crawford.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Crawford. Mr. Deppermont, are we gonna see this time and time again now as you?
I'm not not planning on having any more sons, no. What I'm gonna do with the other two, Ms. Lambert has explained to us that we have one son that lives with us right now, and that we can build on that portion where our house is to the left, as long as we keep it at a certain square foot, and we're prepared to do that eventually. The third son, we own some property in the Beater, so he'll probably be a few miles down the road from us.
Okay.
Unless I can get you guys to agree to some of these waivers on what it costs to put that road in.
No, it's difficult to, not put the waivers in place. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. Please vote.
Mr. Dougherty? Yeas 11, nays 0.
Okay. All right, we got one more item here. It's a letter to Chris. All right, this is 2018-1105 PP. Providence Park Phase 1, developer owner Providence Park LLC, engineer SLD Engineering and Surveying, Parish Council District Representative Honorable James Thompson, that's Martha Casabon. General location, property is located on the east side of Louisiana 1077, north of US Highway 190, Covington, Ward 1, District 3. Good evening.
Yes, sir.
Staff?
Yes, sir. Honorable Commissioners, the office is in receipt of Mr. Rodney Savoy of Providence Park LLC's request to extend the preliminary approval date for Providence Park Subdivision Phase 1. The developer is actively pursuing the required state and/or federal authorizations for this development. The developer is actively pursuing the required state and/or federal authorizations for this development. This office has reviewed Mr. Savoy's request and has no objection to a one-year extension of the preliminary approval. Thank you.
Okay. Is Mr. Savoy here? Good evening again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Paul Marone, again, on behalf of Providence Parks LLC. We are requesting an extension of preliminary approval for this first phase of Providence Parks subdivision. To give you a little bit of history, this was the case that was delayed for, I believe, over a year while the parish council set up a commission to study one of the provisions of the drainage ordinance. After that process, the ordinance was either clarified or amended, depending on your interpretation, but there was an edict that came out. At that point, we were able to revise our plan to meet that ordinance, and we were granted approval. That approval took place at the January council meeting this year. That council meeting was moved back because of the inauguration of the new council members. Within about 30 days after that, we all know what happened. And so we have been dealing with the effects of 2020 since that time. We are still working on our core permit. We're still working with DOTD on some driveway issues. And as a result, we're asking that our approval be extended. To my knowledge, this is not a request that that I've ever been involved with that has been denied. If there's been a showing that there's at least a good faith effort to obtain these approvals, which we have. If there was ever a year in which an approval of an extension might be appropriate, I would respectfully suggest to you that 2020 might be that year, given the sort of unprecedented events that we've had to deal with. But all that being said, we're just simply asking for an extension of time in which to continue to pursue some of these other permits that need to be procured before we can actually start work. We appreciate your consideration this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of this postponement? Anyone wish to speak against?
Give me a second. Hi, John Martin, President of the Goodby Civic Association, 12375 Ark Road. I don't want to leave this land barren, but you know, we've had some tremendous problems come up in these last few years, the flooding and the other problems that have come up. And I first want to give you all a little bit, I know I've got 10 minutes, so I want to give you a little impression of what that particular area looks like. We need building, we need something to be built, but we need something to be built with the idea that this is in a floodplain, that this is in flood zone A. And it made my little heart feel good hearing people talk about, well, we know we've got problems, you know, and there's a difference in the land, and we certainly have experienced that in the last, this is Mike's computer, this is Mike Stark, and he's here for that. And of course, Don Henderson back here. The other people, Corbett has kept them away. I don't blame them.
Go ahead, John. I'm having a difficult time getting this.
Please, sir, can you get this thing cranked up? As opposed to the young lady that didn't know, so she didn't bring things, I brought them. So I want y'all to see what this area looks like, and then either at the end of this or even pouring into the rebuttal time, I've got specific information that I want y'all to be aware of. That, and all we're looking to do, what we're looking to do, I'll tell you beforehand, is the information wasn't given in the appropriate length of time. They have a year to do the information. The wetlands permit has not been done. They worked on traffic. Soap and tallow is actually a scenic river, and they don't have the permit for that. And these are the things that aren't done that really, you could do that, most of this I would assume over the phone, but. Aha.
Rain and water flowing from as far away as Washington Parish.
Can we turn that up, sir?
Development in our area must be done.
Can we get the volume so people can hear it?
Flooding history isn't formed.
This is Spring Lakes. Spring Lakes is being built now, and it's obeyed all of the rules and regulations that you're supposed to do. Okay, and they're underwater.
There have been 21 floods from 2000 until now.
Can y'all hear that now?
A span of 20 years.
Good.
In the past
So
5
even with
years,
the rules
we have
that
had
y'all
3
have,
major flooding
Spring Lakes
events.
is right north
Why?
of, there's a
Rain
road
and
in
storms
between
are
Spring
given
Lakes
in
and
our
Providence Park.
This year
And
alone,
this is what Spring
we've
Lakes look
had
like.
3 storms.
Now think about people
before the
that
start
bought
of
these
hurricane
houses.
season. Predictions of
Bought the
16 to
houses,
19
and
storms,
they're underwater.
with 3 of
Wait a
them
minute, John.
being major.
Before they've
or
even gotten a
being
chance
made.
to move into
So
it.
what can we do?
Thank you.
We need development. We need smart development.
Ron, you have a comment or a question, or?
Yes, just on the position of etiquette and trying to grasp everything.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Martin, if
Yes.
you ask us, can we hear it, turn it up? So we're trying to listen, and we're trying to hear you too. So which one do you want us to do? Listen to this?
Listen to what they're saying, and I'm probably gonna overtalk some of it, and I apologize. You know, what I'm gonna overtalk, but I'll,
Yeah. Thank you.
some of these things I look.
Shows us the problem, sir, is we're trying to record this at the
not speaking into the microphone, they can't hear it, and it doesn't up on the recording.
So they can hear.
So they can hear, I'm gonna do one or two, one or the other, which one you want? Okay. Is that okay?
Hundreds of homes are scheduled to be built there. Years ago, the Goodby Civic Association hired Dr. Ezra Boyd, a PhD in land development. His results show that the land on which Providence Park is to be developed will flood 5 to 10 times in 30 years, with 1 to 3 of these floods being catastrophic. Homes north of this area already have a history of flooding that can only worsen after Providence Park is built. The Tchefuncte floodplain can only take so much abuse. You will see the result of this in the following videos and pictures. Some people think it's too expensive to build on raised foundations. Developers who have a set system of building push this idea. They build and leave and do not have to deal with the consequences. A FEMA brochure using a typical 1,400 square foot home shows that building on elevated foundations can actually save the homeowner money. In 3.5 years, the cost of elevating the foundation is paid off, and the owner saves $30,000 over 30 years. Homes are not flooded. Possessions are not lost. Insurance is lower. Equity increases rather than decreasing because the home is flooded. Families do not have to rebuild again and again. As leaders in our parish, you have the power to stop this devastation. Bring the ordinances up to date. What will you leave your children? They should be able to live in St. Tammany without being afraid every time it rains. Do you think of houses flooded? Do not think of houses flooded, but of families flooded, and what they must go through to make themselves whole again, if they can. You have the power to change St. Tammany for the better. Please watch the entire film. See for yourself what families are suffering and will continue to suffer until our ordinances change to protect them. Thank you, and God bless.
When it rained 5 days and the sky turned dark as night, then trouble taking place in the lowlands at night. I woke up this morning, can't even get out of my door. I woke up this morning,
Thank you. I'm gonna bring the specifics up in the rebuttal part. And remember, we're not trying to stop development. And I'm so impressed with some of the ideas I've heard here tonight. What we're trying to do is get development that realizes where they're developing these houses. And for the sake of the people that are buying these houses, you see what it looks like in our area. And Providence Park, according to Boyd, is gonna go underwater, and unless you build it up. And if you build it up, then the people around it are gonna be worse for it. So I'm gonna sit down and let Paul, I don't know if Paul can sing, but I'll let him try to sing a little bit.
Okay. Can you hear me? Back on, okay. So I have seen this video before, never quite to the music like that, which I'm, but these videos were brought up and were front and center in these drainage committee meetings that I mentioned to you that delayed this project for over a year. And there was much discussion. Dr. Martin was on that committee, as was I, as was a number of other people. But what came out of that committee, as I said, was that there was either a clarification or a change in the ordinance as to how fill mitigation is handled and calculated, in particular how it's handled and calculated with regards to the construction of retention ponds and whether or not you can use the fill from the retention ponds to offset your mitigation fill credits. And they said you can't do that, that if you're going to dig a pond for retention, then that doesn't count toward fill mitigation. You've got to excavate other material to do that, which was, in our view, a more onerous, much more onerous interpretation. But that's the interpretation that was given, and that we had to apply to this project, which we did apply to this project. And we submitted plans that were compliant with that. Your staff recommended them and were approved. So respectfully, we're not here tonight asking for waivers or any changes from what the regulations are. We're just simply saying in 2020, we were not able to get our core permit and we were not able to get things worked out with DOTD. That is not unusual. That happens, and it is particularly not unusual in this year. I would say this with regards to the thrust of what I think Dr. Martin is saying. You heard him say, and you heard comment in the video about how homes are constructed and how developments are done and so forth. These are legislative arguments, respectfully. It goes to the heart of what you all just talked about, that Mr. Rest brought up and what others talked about. You said before that it is your job to apply the ordinances, that if we want to change the ordinances, we've got to go to the legislative branch. Can't go to the administrative group, we've got to go to the legislative group. And I think that is very applicable to what we're talking about, at least with regards to what Dr. Martin is saying. Dr. Martin is saying, I believe, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but he would like to see different criteria and different regulations applicable to Providence Parks and other areas that he believes are similarly situated. I would tell you that I'm not going to debate that tonight, okay? All I'm going to tell you is that the ordinances that are in place today, that were in place in January of this year, we complied with those ordinances, and we meet those ordinances. All we're here tonight asking is not to be penalized because in the most unusual of years, we have not been able to procure the core permit, the DOTD approval, as well as we're waiting on some things from Tammany Utilities for capacity for sewer in that area. So those are three factors that have been exacerbated by COVID, and it's simply a timing thing. It's not a waiver. We're not asking for relief from the regulations. We're simply asking that we not be penalized because we didn't have these done, and we hadn't started ground in a year. That's really what it happens. We had, the ordinance says we've got to pull that work order and go to work within that year. And we can't pull that work order until we get these other issues resolved. So as is customary, we're asking for an extension, not a waiver, but an extension. And we applied and we complied with the ordinances that were in place and that are in place today. And those ordinances there was a long look at them for over a year before our approval was granted. The people that Dr. Martin and others fought very forcefully for the interpretation that was ultimately given and that we now comply with. So I would respectfully urge you not to penalize my client. That if changes are needed in the ordinance, that is a legislative decision. If I disagree with those, I'll go argue them. But my client has spent millions of dollars on this site in reliance on these approvals. And I would respectfully suggest in December of 2020 that an extension of time is not unreasonable. But I thank you for your consideration this evening.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Dr. Martin? I've got a call. Go ahead.
Okay.
You got 5 minutes in rebuttal.
Yes, sir. Can somebody hand these out, each one to a person, please, if you don't mind?
Are they the same?
They're all the same. So everybody gets one. Okay, sir, I'm ready for the 5 minutes. What Paul said is 100% correct. You know, we changed some of the things that they had to do. We interpreted the ordinance. Everybody agreed on it. And so they have to do things a little bit different. And Paul's right. Y'all are not the legislative branch. What I'm asking is that you give the time, this 2040, give the time, particularly looking at what you saw is happening in the area and the loss of money, the loss of houses, the loss of possessions that these people are going through that live in this flood zone A area. And that's what this is. So I'm not asking you to penalize them. They're not going to be able to complete, I don't think they are, complete the requirements within the required time. So that's nothing different. It's in the rules, and if they don't complete it in the required length of time, then they have to start over. Now, what that's going to do is give time for exactly the things that y'all were talking about for the legislative branch to look at some of these things. We've got a new committee going on that to look at these things and decide whether houses should be built, just like people have said here, houses should be built according to what kind of land they're in. And we're not asking houses not to be built. What we're asking is that these houses in a floodplain be built on raised foundations, okay? And if you look through your information, the first one is Ezra Boyd's report, and he says in the report, his recommendation, well, he says in the report basically that this particular land that they're developing here, which they really haven't done anything with that I'm aware of, but if you look at the last sentence on the second page from the end, it says, which there have been 9 to 18 times over the last 65 years that this subdivision area has been flooded, which corresponds to an observed annual frequency flooding of 14 to 28%. Now, let's just be generous and say, let's say 20%, cut it in half. Every 5 years, the historical records have shown that this area is going to flood. And that's not counting the last two, because this was written in 18, I think, okay? So this area floods. And if you raise it up, then you're going to affect everybody around it. If you look at the FEMA brochure that I have, One of the complaints, of course, the developers, well, it costs too much. You know, we're used to doing it this way, and it costs too much to do an elevated foundation, okay? Well, what it does is it saves the owner. He pays more in the front, say a 2,000 square foot house, he's gonna pay maybe $6,000 more in the front, but over the life of the loan, he'll pay it off in that particular increase in 3.5 years. And over the life of the loan, he's gonna save $37,000. Plus, he doesn't lose his house. He doesn't have to rebuild. He can sell the house and sell it for more because it was in a flood area, flood zone A, you can't change that, and it didn't flood. It was built elevated, okay? Not on a slab, but on piers where the water can run underneath. Because if you build up enough mud, then you're gonna affect your neighbors. And we don't wanna do that. So this is just common sense things. The two pictures I have in the back, if you look at these pictures, this is standing on 1077, the first one, and looking down McGee Road. On the left are the houses that are flooded. On the right is where Providence Park is. Does it look like a good place to build a house? Would you want to build a house there? I would say not, unless they really elevate it. And if they really elevate it, what's going to happen to these houses on McGee? The water's going to hit their stop, and they're going to go up. The last picture I have, the last one I have, is looking down 1077, right past 190. And you're looking north. If you look to the right, this is where Providence Park is, that wooded area. If you notice, there's water coming out and across that, the road there. So the water comes down from the north, it hits this area, this 1077 and 190, and then it goes across, it goes across the road. Okay, give me 2 seconds. It goes across the road. If you block this with Providence Park, that water will go straight down, and Covington is right in its headlight. Okay, thank you all. I appreciate what y'all are doing. Please consider just postponing this and give time a chance to develop new ordinances. Thank y'all very much.
The postponing of it.
Well, don't do the extension. Do not give the extension.
There's gonna be, and I'm gonna look to staff, there will be things that will happen if we don't do the extension, that they're gonna have to pretty much basically start over again, right?
Well,
They would have to reapply for preliminary approval.
Right.
Okay, but
Paperwork.
if we go with the extension, then that gives them time to get the wetlands permit and everything else, right?
Correct. It extends their preliminary approval they've already received based on the current code.
Okay. And I think that would be, John, if we hadn't had COVID, of course, if we hadn't had COVID, a lot of things would have been different. But since we had COVID, personally, I feel like the extension would be appropriate. Now, I don't know how about the rest of the commissioners, and I guess I have to look at Paul and say, is 1 year enough? And if it's not, it might be one of these that we postpone indefinitely, and all that does is give the developer plenty of time to get his ducks in a row, and it will take him 60 or 90 days to get something back on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
60 days,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Yeah, and it's difficult for them to get that wetlands permit and difficult for them to get the scenic river permit. And I think that's been a hangup because that's a phone call.
Okay.
You know,
All right.
that's,
Well, let me
the
get-
Corvid wouldn't do anything with that.
Let me get to Matthew Allen here and then see what Mr.
Oh,
Allen,
well,
he's against
Matthew
it.
Allen has all the technical stuff about, that's what that's all about.
Yeah, Paul, I'll give you additional time as well, okay? All right. Mr. Allen?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my card. Matthew Allen, 13058 Major Lane, Folsom, Louisiana, 70437. And I wanted to point out some inconsistencies in Mr. Marone's and the COVID argument. The Permit for the wetlands was actually applied for back in 2018, and I submitted comments on it back then. So it's just not this year. It's been 2.5 years. And that indicates there are problems with this that probably really need to be looked at again. Second is, during the original preliminary hearing, the developer's representative stated that Providence Park would not require scenic rivers permit. But I went ahead and contacted Scenic Rivers, and they sent me a letter, which I attached to an email to you today, stating they are required for a scenic river permit. I contacted them today, and they have not even attempted to apply for it, so they're just dragging their toes. It's their own fault, really. They're having to get this extension. I put in a comment number 3 that I want to correct. The LDEQ has approved expanding the sewer treatment plant in Goodby. But Dr. Martin was saying there's a sensitive location, and we all feel that the parish has been avoiding the special flood hazard area ordinance and the Code of Federal Regulations that pertain to flood zones and the requirements for building in them. Now, it's in the developer's interest to ignore those, which Mr. Marone has done very well, but it's in the parish's current and future residents' interest to apply the flood hazard area ordinances. And by denying the extension, we would be able to bring that all back up again in front of you when they do it. As far as the scenic river permit, they do need one. That's at least a 45-day public comment period plus more. So you're looking at several months there, which would give them time to resubmit preliminary. Thank you all for letting me have these comments.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. All right.
Thank you.
We'll go back to Mr. Marone for some additional time.
First,
Couple of minutes.
First, I'm not going to sit here and tell any of you that 2020 has been an unusual year. You've lived it. And to suggest that my client has not had complications that have delayed their efforts to get these permits, that they have just been dragging their feet, sunning themselves on the beach during 2020, I find offensive. I find it offensive. But I'll leave that to you. Everybody in this room that's lived through 2020, if you think it's been an unusual and difficult year to be able to get things accomplished. I think it has been. With regards to the plan approval by DEQ, maybe DEQ has approved the plant, but until the approved expansion has been constructed, the capacity doesn't exist. So that is the issue that we've been trying to work with Tammany Utilities on, about when will they be able to build that to create the sewer capacity for us to be able to connect to. Simply denying the extension, what would it do? Let me give you my view on what it would accomplish. Yes, we would have to go back to square one. We would have to file the same plans with new fees, go through the same process, because the ordinances have not changed. So you would be penalizing my client, sending them back through a process that they complied with the first time, where no changes have been made in those ordinances. It's not like in mid-2020 there was this change, and if we send him back, he's got to comply with this new regulation. That's not the case. I mean, the regulations that we complied with in January of 2020 are the same regulations. So I'll state again, I think what I hear from Dr. Martin, and I've heard before, is a passionate plea, but it's a legislative plea. It's a change the ordinances to whether it's requiring being built on piers as opposed to slab construction, which I know is something that means a lot to him. There's no requirement in the ordinances that you build on piers. There are requirements in the ordinances about whether or not you can use fill and what you have to do to comply with that. But those are two different things. And we comply with those fill mitigation efforts. So I would urge you all to please consider granting the extension for the reasons that I've stated. I believe that it's a very reasonable request, given where we are, given where we've been. To Chairman Doherty's question, is a year enough? I think so. I think so. I believe so, and that's all we're asking. We're not asking you to extend it out beyond that. That, in my view, I have never seen a request like this for an extension beyond a year, and I'm not prepared to ask you to do that when I've never seen this commission do that before. But I do think a year is reasonable under the circumstances, and I appreciate your consideration this evening.
Okay, thank you, Paul. All right, we've got three commissioners right now that wish to speak. Commissioner McInnes? Yeah, I'm closing it, bringing it back to the commission.
Thanks very much. All of you know I live in the Goodby area, and I'm extremely familiar with this project and this area. And I'd like to refer to the letter that Mr. Matthew Allen sent all the commissioners today, and he reiterated a number of those comments this evening, and I couldn't have said it better. The wetland permit has been submitted since 2018. That's not due to COVID. Asking for a scenic rivers permit, they haven't even done that, so I don't believe you can blame that on COVID. The images that Dr. Martin showed were from the 2016 flood event, in which Goodby flooded twice, in March and in August. And this project was subsequently approved even with that information. But we now have new information. It's flooded again. It flooded in May of this year. I have photographs myself of McGee Road underwater, which is bordering the north side of this project. The Goodby Industrial Park to the south flooded. So what do you think? I believe since these two areas flooded, the project in the immediate center also flooded. This site drains to Soap and Tallow Creek and then ultimately to the Chafuncta River. The Tallow Creek subdivision flooded in May of this year, and a couple of other subdivisions adjacent to Tallow Creek. So once this project happens, I would think it's just going to increase the flooding downstream. It was very close to Terabella as well. You know, now we have new administration, a new commission. We have new information about this area, and we have a new way that we're looking at things in this parish. This project has already been delayed, but I suggest while they're getting their ducks in a row, I think it would be an excellent opportunity for us to just take one last look at their drainage and hydrology plan. I'm not suggesting we're going to say scrap it and everything's got to be on piers, but I'm saying that just like Commissioner Rez was saying, we can do better in this parish. We are not meeting the needs of the citizens. This is our opportunity. Yes, it's on a technicality. They had a year. Ordinance says you have a year. I don't know of any other project that has asked us to postpone or give them an extension due to COVID. This is the first that I can recall. So although I appreciate that, we haven't been hit by waves of COVID requests for extensions. This is just an opportunity that we can take right now to just say, resubmit your plans, and I would suggest we say, without having to repay the fees. But just give us one more chance to maybe tweak it, to make sure, because it's flooded again since it was approved. I move that we deny this extension. We owe it to the people of Goodby. We owe it to the people in this area. What is worse? Delaying, say, for 3 months so that we can take another look to tweak it, to make it a little better? Or having 400-plus homes flood? Where does your conscience lie? So I urge you to consider, with the new information that we have, that we deny this extension request. I also request that the information that's been provided by Dr. Martin, which includes a professional hydrologist study of the area, and that letter and information submitted to Matt Allen be made a part of the record, so that it's clear to anyone, particularly if this site floods and we did nothing, that it is a part of the record that we had the information in hand and we did not act. So I move that we deny.
All right. We've got a motion on the floor to deny the extension. Do I hear a second? Motion fails for lack of second. Commissioner Willie.
I have a question of staff, I guess. If this extension doesn't get approved, he'd have to start preliminary over, right?
They'd be required to resubmit for preliminary subdivision approval, yes, sir.
What happens to tentative approval?
They've already gone through the tentative and the zoning and the layout and everything. The way the ordinance reads is that if they fail to obtain a work order within a year, they've got to go back to their preliminary approval, and whether they pay fees or not is up to the planning commission.
So they can base their presentation off of their tentative approval?
Yes, sir.
That was approved in, I don't know what year it was approved in.
I'm not sure. I know the preliminary was postponed for quite a while, but they could base their new preliminary submittal based off the one that was previously approved, as it conformed to ordinances at the time, and nothing's changed since then.
So the preliminary will be subject to their tentative approval and whatever, any new, it was mentioned, no new laws. The laws hasn't changed. Any of the rules
Correct.
hasn't changed. So the tentative would be in place, and then they'd have to resubmit the preliminary, whether they pay the fees or not.
So I guess make sure I'm understanding what you're asking me. So if you guys deny this extension tonight, the next deadline is, I think it's the second Friday in January. They can submit at that time for preliminary approval to be heard as for preliminary, again, with the same documentation that they currently have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm trying to understand the time frame of how all that would work. If it'd be enough time for people to get together and try to, find some solutions to this, so they can raise the homes and go through the process. So, all right, thank you.
So it could be back in front of you on February's
okay.
meeting.
That's
if
what
that
I was
answers your
trying to get
question.
to.
Commissioner Seeger.
Mr. Marone, I have a couple questions. A developer about a month ago gave a price break on the lots for people to build or raise homes. Do you think that your developer might be interested in that?
I'm aware of that case. I have not talked to my client about that, but I am happy to do that. And we'll certainly bring that up to him, and we'll model it after the case that you're referring to.
My second question is, in your professional opinion, has your client been negligent in pursuing any of these permits?
I do not believe that, in light of everything that has gone on this year. I do not believe that
That being said, I
he's been
motion that we grant the extension, the postponement, whatever, however it's worded. I move that we grant that movement, that extension.
Your motion is to allow the extension for 1 year,
Yes.
okay? Dimly.
To address some of the questions that have been raised, and because this is a unique issue, I just want to read the section of the code that's at issue here, and then also give some advice on the motion itself. It's in section 125-200 of the code, and subsection A says, should work not commence within 1 year after the issuance of a work permit in any subdivision for which approval of the preliminary plat was given by the planning commission or its successor in office, no work can thereafter commence unless and until the planning commission or its successor in office extends the time thereof. The governing authority need not extend the time for commencement and may require the reprocessing thereof of the same manner and to the same extent, including payment of fees pertaining thereto, as if said subdivision were a new proposed development. However, in any case, a work permit must be granted by the parish within 1 year after receiving preliminary approval by the planning commission. Otherwise, the development must be resubmitted for preliminary review, and subject to all applicable advertising requirements and payment of fees. This is something that Christus, you and I have discussed today, and my interpretation of this section allows the planning commission to extend the 1 year expiration of the work order by a simple majority vote of the commission. That last sentence, however, in any case, a work permit must be granted within 1 year. I believe that in order to extend this preliminary approval beyond the 1 year is going to require a waiver or a 2/3 majority of the commission to extend the preliminary approval. And if we go down to section 125-224, this commission can waive the regulations of that provision I read before where a hardship is demonstrated.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner McGinnis again.
I'd like to amend the proposal if we do move forward, that it not be for a year. That I don't see why another 12 months is required. If there is difficulties with this development and getting their wetland permit, then I think that another year is exceedingly generous. I would suggest 6 months.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Unless Commissioner Seeger wants to amend his motion, I'll second.
Okay. He gave me a no on the extending it or amending it. So we've got a motion and a second to extend for 1 year. For preliminary approval. Please vote.
We have 8 yeas, 3 nays.
Okay, so the motion to extend 1 year was approved. Okay? All right, that's the last item I have on my agenda. I hear a motion to adjourn. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Same to you.